Good day, everyone. My report is about aspect in Module 8. Aspects. Aspect is both grammatical and lexical. It is expressed in predicates, especially in verb inflections and collocations of verbs. For example, it's beginning to break, it's breaking, it's broke, it's broken. However, the expression of aspect may also appear in the certain temporal adverbs, and it's the choice of preparing expressions. The conclusion of aspect is expressed primarily in the predicates of sentence, but there are certain similarities. Next is generic and specific predication. Generic, unbounded situation or stage internal truths, statement about things that we do not expect to change. Example of generic is 2 and 2 make 4. The Atlantic Ocean separate Africa. That is permanent. We cannot change it. In a specific predicate, bounded per temporary stage certain situation that exists at the present time. Example of specific predications. Gregory is here. The company manufactured silicon chips. Next is acceptual modifier. Affirmative and negative call attention to boundaries. The beginning or end of stage changes from one stage to another. Example, already, still, not yet, anymore. Next page is stative predicates and dynamic predicates. Stative predicates, this is described stage that exists whether permanent or temporary in nature. It requires no expenditures of energy and not continuous until energy is expanding to change that state. Stative predicates is typically durative in aspect. This is typically durations in aspect. Example here is, the children were hungry. Snow lay on the ground. Dynamic predicates. Change from one stage to another reports a situation that will only continue if there is no continual input of energy, but it ceases when energy is no longer expended. Dynamic, this is about explanation with duration who one determine and it was running in accordance with the time that has been made. For example, here is employees are working 8 hours or day. Next is durative and punctual. Durative, related to or being the verbal aspect that expresses action continuing unbroken for a period of time. For example, is Titanic movie was shown in 3 hours. In punctual, related to or being the verbal aspect that expresses momentary actions or action considered as having no temporal durations. A number of punctual verbs of this type can be used in the present tense to express an event planned for a future time. Example is Titanic movie is running on tether from 7 p.m. until 10 a.m. Durative and punctual. Punctual is a verb that refers to events that do not exceed the length of a moment of conditions, while adorative verbs refers to events that do exist interval. Next is the telic and atelic. Atelic predicates do not have an end or goal. We have two classifications of predicates here: the stative sentence and activity sentence. Example of stative sentences is George was waiting. Sandra was holding the baby. And the active sentences example is Sandra was swimming. George was running. Telex sentences have an end result. So we have two classification of predicates here again. The achievement sentences and accomplishment sentences. Example of achievement sentences is George was living, Sandra was dying. In accomplishment sentences is Sandra was writing a letter, George was cutting a rope. So, next is inclusive, continuative, inclusive aspect. In inclusive, it's punctual verb to express the beginning. For example is, Yanti arrives the door. This is aspectually indicating that an action is about to be entered. In continuative is durative verbs that express. For example, here is, Yelty stays at the door. This is a grammatical aspect representing action that are still happening. The last is inclusive is punctual verb which express the end. Example is, Cheetah leaves from the door. Next is prospective and retrospective. Prospectives are oriented towards later happenings, acts, or think of. This is expected or expecting to be something particular in the future. For example is, we asked Ronald to drive slower. Jessica is thinking of visiting her grandmother. Retrospective or preview actions, apologize or deny. This is looking back on or dealing with past event or situation. Example is, Edgar's apologize for missing the meeting or for having missed the meeting. We denied seeing the report or having seen the report. Lastly, the some grammatical expression of aspect. If an aspectual meaning can be expressed with all or a significant number of the predicates of a language, the expression is grammatical. The prospective, the simple present can use in prospective sense. For example, they leave next Wednesday. This is likely to happen at a future. The perfect or retrogressive form refers to events that occurred in the past and situations that began in the past and which are seen as relevant now at the present time. This is the improving things in the future based on their learning. Lastly is the progressive forms or continuous or durative forms, bounded. Progressives, the two languages have the same semantics in the case of activities and accomplishments. They encode or event in progress, interpretations, simultaneous, will be the moment of speech or it is present tense. For example is, we're watching televisions. Back is smoking. We adding ing. And that's all. Thank you.